Today's message is for somebody who's struggling with indecision. And this doesn't feel like a decision between two things. It feels like you have a lot of choice, or it's a lot of little things that are starting to overwhelm you mentally because you can't decide how all of these different pieces of you fit together or which ones take precedence. In general, it's just a feeling that your signal is scrambled and maybe that you're on a time crunch and you need to make a decision about what it is you want to do. But you have lots of talents, skills, options, places you could go. So today, Spirit has 3 very clear steps for you. And I'm going to extrapolate and see what comes up as we go. So, first of all, I'll explain the image that I was seeing before this transmission. I kept seeing the game Connect 4, where you have a bunch of usually red or yellow tokens and your opponent has the other color, and you have to line up 4 of them in a line. And there were 2 facets to this. The first one was that you usually have to wait for the circumstances to be right for you to win that game. It's not really a matter of skill. It's usually the luck of where the other person puts their tokens so that you can line yours up in a row. And then the second thing is, even though your tokens aren't in the game, you still have a whole horde of tokens, right? So say you're the color red and you're trying to line up 4 of them in a row. You feel like you're failing because you haven't put 4 inside of the little contraption of the game, but you still have them. So that might be an indication that maybe you're feeling that some of your skills are obsolete, or it's been such a long time since you've used certain skills, so maybe you feel like a bit of an imposter engaging them, or you don't know how they would be relevant to what you're doing now, but you really want to cohere everything. You want everything to be all the same color. You want it all to make sense with your essence and who you are. And right now it feels like you have a big bag of multicolored tokens. The first step of the 3 that Spirit is giving you is to rest. I know this is really annoying to hear because it doesn't make sense when you feel like you don't have time to rest, but this has come up in a few other transmissions on this channel. The act of resting, it's like exercise. It's a muscle that you're building, and it's a magnetism muscle because you are your most magnetic when you're at rest. When you're not forcing, when you're not trying, that's when your manifestations will come in because you're in that receiving, receptive mode. And so for someone like you who is always doing, always upskilling, you've probably never really accustomed yourself to rest. And so that's the point. You can, if you can, reframe it to think about it like work. Think of it like exercise. So you're learning to rest and you're getting better at resting, and you can consider resting as an actual task. And the more and more you can learn how to feel true rest, true relaxation, you can see that as a gain, as another skill you've gained. The second advice Spirit has for you is patience. So similar to rest, but this one is the ability to take a step back from your cycle such that you can see your behavior starting to repeat itself. For example, cycles of spending, noticing that you tend to really want to buy. There's always an item that's on your mind as the thing you want to buy. But if you wait long enough without actually buying it, that will switch and it will become a different item, and you'll still feel the same pull and the same deep or urgent desire to buy that item, but you realize that it's not about the item. It was about the impulse or about something in you that wants to be relieved by the act of spending or the act of buying. And so if you take a step back and instead of looking at the item that you're buying, look at the pattern in you that wants to buy the item, that's what this second piece of advice from Spirit is about. It's about the patience to watch your own cycle unfold so that you can realize what is obsolete. What about your cycle doesn't need to be a part of your life anymore? With that spending one being the example, but this could be your seasons, if you're female, your menstrual cycle, your relationship with exercise and food. Definitely there's something about your relationship with reward and restraint. So not punishment and reward, but the idea of you get to treat yourself if you've done enough hard work. These kinds of cycles, Spirit wants you to start taking note of how you apply yourself unconsciously to cycles of control and need and validation and soothing. There's something about your self-soothing cycle, and this goes hand in hand with the rest advice, because it's something like your patterns, your habitual patterns that have been unconscious until now. They have some correlation with rest, or they're a replacement for rest. And so maybe you find that once you learn how to rest properly, you don't have this need to spend, for example. So that's the second piece of advice. And the third, it's kind of the opposite, or the thing that comes out last when you've done those first two steps, is that certain properties want to emerge, and there's a freshness or a very distinct sense of choice that will arise when you've taken note of these habitual cycles that come from your unconscious, and you start to realize what it feels like to have an urge that is not impulsive or driven by pattern, but instead comes from a decisive choice where it feels so aligned that you know that this is what you have to do. And so that's what the patience is about, and that Connect 4 image again of waiting it out until the factors are right for you to make your move. And that's an undeniable feeling when it comes up. You won't question it, and you won't feel like you're in a hurry. You'll just know exactly what to do, and the things that aren't as important or relevant will just softly fall off the back. The longer you can be patient and wait it out. And it doesn't mean to do nothing, but it does feel like you've been doing everything, and it's clouding your ability to see what really matters to you, what skills are still relevant, what skills want to come back, and how they all fit together. Because when you're doing so much, everything has equal importance. And that isn't actually true of who you are. There's certain things that are more valuable to you, but it will take you a whole cycle, like a whole lunar cycle or two, to see which ones can sustain beyond your emotional or the planetary impulses, right? That's why you can't just sit down and journal this or ask yourself, which stuff do I care about more? You actually need to take a process with this and study it. You need to watch yourself. You need to become the observer and notice your pattern and see what remains consistent throughout these cycles. So I'm going to leave the message there for now. If you like a one-to-one reading, the link is in my bio. Comment, like, subscribe, be brave, and I'll see you in the next reading.